I was standing in a room full of strangers, reporters, investors, even a few politicians, all here for the grand opening of something they couldn't stop talking about: sustainable luxury, a new kind of vehicle showroom, an immersive gallery of recycled art and electric innovation. What none of them knew, what even my own family hadn't known just a few months earlier, was that every piece on display, every car, every light fixture, every chiseled panel of reclaimed wood and forged steel had been born out of rejection. You see, not long ago, I was the family disappointment, the one they didn't talk about at reunions, the one who wasted her education playing with glue. But now I was the CEO of Phoenix Electric, a company that rose from the ashes of both their broken business and our broken bond. But let's go back to the beginning, because they didn't know what I'd built until it was far too late. It started with a text message. Family meeting, 7 Euro PM sharp, non-negotiable. The kind of message that doesn't ask, it commands. My mother's way of keeping control without appearing controlling. That was her magic trick. Wrapped in pearls and politeness, she wielded manipulation like a scalpel. As I stood in the front porch of their grand colonial home, my hand hovered just above the brass door knocker. The house hadn't changed. Imported marble entryway, picture perfect hedges, the scent of expensive candles drifting through open windows. What had changed was me. I was no longer the teenager begging for their approval. I was no longer the college dropout they sighed over at brunch. But they didn't know that yet. They still thought I was just Melanie the black sheep. The artist, the glue gunner, the girl who made junk look pretty. The door opened before I knocked. "You're late," my mother said, her lips, taut eyes scanning me like a hotel manager inspecting a stain. "Everyone's waiting." It was 6:58. In my family, anything short of 10 minutes early was a personal failure. I stepped inside to find them all gathered in the living room. Like some kind of courtroom drama, my sister, Wendy, corporate attorney, turned professional bulldozer. Louisa, the surgeon with a God complex. Nathan, the baby genius, too busy scrolling TikTok to say hi. And my father, the man who ran the family business like it was a legacy handed down from royalty. "Sit down, Melanie," he said, motioning to a lone armchair facing them. I didn't move. "What's this?" I asked. Wendy opened her briefcase. I should have known something legal was coming. She slid a document across the coffee table. "We've made a decision." A necessary one, my mother added, perching herself on the edge of a sofa like a fragile swan made of judgment. The phrases on the document hit me like cold water. Termination of familial association, formal dissolution of inheritance rights, disownment. I looked up. "You're cutting me off." "It's not personal," Nathan finally said, not looking up from his phone. I laughed, not from humor, but from the absurdity of it all. "You're disowning me like it's a quarterly board vote." My father clasped his hands behind his back. "Your choices reflect poorly on the family. This craft hobby is beneath you." I stood still. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Because what they didn't know, what none of them had even bothered to ask, was that my craft hobby had made over $80,000 last month. Instead, I calmly asked, "Where do I sign?" Wendy blinked. What? You want me gone? I'm gone. Let's make it official." They hadn't expected that. They expected a meltdown, a plea for love, a daughter begging not to be thrown away. But I didn't beg. I initialed the document signed at the bottom and handed it back to them. "Hope this helps you sleep at night." And with that, I was no longer a Gonzalez, at least not on paper, but I still carried the name. And they'd learn what that name meant soon enough. 3 days later, I was in my studio brushing gold leaf across the edge of a handcrafted mirror made from salvaged barnwood. My best friend Mara nearly spilled her coffee when I told her. "They disowned you," she gasped. "Like, formally. Legal papers and all," I said calmly, not looking up. "And you signed them?" Without blinking. "But your inheritance." I put down the brush and met her eyes. What inheritance? The dealership. The name. The constant reminders that I was never good enough. That wasn't an inheritance. That was a chain. Ezra, my marketing partner, burst through the door with his laptop. Mel, you need to see this. He spun the screen toward me. My newest product line, sustainable light fixtures made from ocean trash, had just been picked up by a major home design magazine. They're calling you the artisan of the future, he said breathlessly. Mara squinted. Is that real revenue? Ezra grinned. 6 figures last month. That article's going viral. People love what we're doing, especially your story. I looked around at the shelves of reclaimed glass twisted copper wire, rusted gears polished into beauty. I wasn't just making products. I was telling stories, turning waste into wonder, giving second chances to things others had thrown away. Kind of like me. Let me pause here and say something important. When your family makes you feel like the outsider, like you're less than because you chose a path they don't understand, you begin to shrink yourself. At first, I did that. I stayed quiet, downplayed my business, laughed when they made jokes about my glue gun empire. But there's something powerful about silence. It gives you space to build. And while they looked the other way, I built something unstoppable. If you're the black sheep of your family, I want you to hear this loud and clear. Yes, you are not broken. You are not a mistake. You are just different. And different is often the first sign of greatness. 2 days after the article dropped, everything changed. Orders exploded. Retailers reached out with bulk inquiries. Social media blew up with DIY influencers showcasing my designs. Then came the call. Hi, this is Catherine from Business Forward magazine. We're doing a piece on rising female entrepreneurs in the sustainability space. Your name keeps coming up. My heart almost stopped. Yes, I said, I'd love to talk. Within a week, I was prepping for a cover shoot. Mara helped with styling. Ezra fielded brand partnerships. I hired 2 assistants. My home garage, once a dusty mess of ideas and broken furniture, had become a production powerhouse. Then the texts started coming in. Not from customers, not from fans, from family. Wendy, we need to talk. Urgent. Louisa, why didn't you tell us mom dinner Sunday? 7 p.m., we have much to discuss. I showed them to Mara. She rolled her eyes. Funny how fast you become family again once you're on a magazine cover. Ezra grinned. Don't respond. Let them read about your success on the news like everyone else. But I responded. Sure, I texted, I'll bring dessert. Sunday came too quickly. I wore a black silk dress that felt like armor, subtle but powerful. A quiet statement that said, I don't need your approval. I brought my own seat to the table. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the same manicured lawn, the same pristine exterior, but something had shifted. The house didn't intimidate me anymore. It felt small. This time, my knock was confident. This time, I wasn't entering as a daughter pleading to be seen. I was entering as a woman who had built something without them. My mother opened the door. Her expression flickered a mixture of surprise anxiety and forced cheerfulness. Melanie, darling, she said, a voice a little too high. You look like someone who isn't here to beg, I said, stepping past her. Inside the same stage had been set Wendy with her briefcase, Louisa, looking distracted, Nathan tapping his phone. My father stood near the fireplace again, the self-appointed judge and executioner of the family's brand image. Only this time they were nervous. And I was on the cover of a national magazine. I didn't sit in the armchair this time. I stood and let the silence fill the room. So I said, what's so urgent? Wendy cleared her throat. We've all seen the article and the press, and you've been busy, Louisa cut in. Congratulations. Thanks, I replied flatly. Nathan looked up from his phone, made eye contact for once. Mom cried when she saw the cover. I'm sure I said. My father stepped forward. Melanie, we've made mistakes. I raised an eyebrow, like disowning your daughter. He didn't flinch. We thought we were protecting the family name. But now we see you've created something remarkable. I sat down slowly. Now you see it. But where were you when I needed you to believe it? No one answered. I looked at Wendy. Let me guess. You brought more paperwork. She nodded, slightly sheepish. I've drawn up a reversal agreement. It would nullify the previous disownment and reinstate you as an equal member of the Gonzalez estate. Convenient timing, I said. right after the cover story and before the museum showcase. Louisa looked up, museum. I let the words hang in the air a moment. The Museum of Modern Art. They're featuring my work in their sustainable design exhibition. They're sending a private car tomorrow. My mother gasped. My father blinked, then said, "We need to talk about the dealership." Struggling, I said, not bothering to hide my smirk. I know. The EV transition hit hard. Your inventory's outdated, and your biggest lender pulled out 2 weeks ago. Wendy blinked. How do you know that? I have advisors now, I replied, real ones. The silence that followed was deafening. There's something wild that happens when you succeed without the support of those who were supposed to love you most. At first, you want to shove it in their faces to prove them wrong with every headline, every dollar. But then you realize the most painful part wasn't being rejected. It was knowing they only valued you when they saw external proof that their love had a price tag. And that price was your conformity. My father's tone shifted from personal to professional. The Gonzalez name still carries weight. He began easing into the pitch. If we merged your sustainable approach with our infrastructure, I interrupted him. You want me to save your business? It could be mutually beneficial, Wendy added. You'd get legacy infrastructure. We get innovation. Except I've already built mine from scratch, I said. No baggage, no boardroom politics, no one trying to vote me out. Louisa leaned forward, but we're family. Are we? I said. 3 months ago, you literally erased me from yours. Nathan finally spoke. Mel, I'm sorry, for real. I didn't stand up for you. I didn't say anything that night. And that was wrong. I paused. That's the first honest thing anyone said since I walked in. My phone buzzed, a message from Ezra. Singapore deal just doubled. They want exclusivity for the next 12 months. Also, the MoMA press team is asking for quotes. Want me to forward? I smiled. I stood up. I have a call in 10 minutes with an international buyer. I'll think about your offer. My father stepped forward. Melanie, please, let's fix this together. I turned to him and said, if you want a business partner, make a formal proposal. If you want a daughter, that window might be closing. Then I walked out again. But this time I was the one holding the door. Back at the studio, Ezra was pacing. MoMA wants a series, not just one piece, he said, eyes wide. They're calling it revolutionary. I sat down at my workbench and picked up a half-finished sculpture, a phoenix rising from shattered glass. I'm naming this piece Family Ties, I said quietly. Mara looked over from the packaging table. A bit on the nose, don't you think? Maybe, I replied. But sometimes the obvious truth is the hardest to say out loud. My phone rang. It was Catherine from Business Forward. We just got the numbers, she said. Your article is the most read profile in our magazine's history. Also, you're being shortlisted for our Entrepreneur of the Year feature. And Forbes 30 Under 30 wants to talk. I hung up and stared at my sculpture. This wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore. This was about showing me what I could do. A few days later, another text came through, this time from my father. Dinner, Wednesday, just the two of us, please. It wasn't like him to say please. I showed it to Mara, who said, you're not seriously going, are you? I nodded. I want to hear it from his mouth. Ezra chimed in. Don't let them guilt you into anything. I won't, I said, looking at the sculpture. But I think it's time they understand who I am now on my terms. I chose the location Lawn, the upscale restaurant where my family once took business associates before the money started bleeding. When I arrived, the maitre d' greeted me by name. Miss Gonzalez, your usual table. I smiled. Yes, please. My father arrived 5 minutes late, already sweating. He looked around the restaurant like a man who didn't belong there anymore. The server brought out a bottle of 1982 Bordeaux. That's 4 figures, my father whispered. It's already paid for, I said. We ate in silence for the first course. He didn't touch his food. Finally, he said, the dealership is dying. We're losing the house. The banks won't help. I nodded. I know. I'm not asking for a handout, he added. I'm asking for a chance. To do what? To rebuild with you. On my terms. He hesitated. Yes. You won't be CEO. I will, I said. He didn't flinch this time. Agreed. I sipped my wine. No more board meetings where my ideas are ignored. No more family gatherings where I'm shamed for being creative. He swallowed, also agreed. I stared at him. Why now? He looked at me, really looked at me, and said, because I see it now. You weren't trying to embarrass us. You were trying to become something we couldn't imagine. And you did. I put down my fork. If we do this, I want the disownment papers burned, literally, in front of the entire board. He nodded. Deal. Family is not defined by blood, it's defined by belief. Who believed in you when you had nothing to show? Who stood by your side before the spotlight turned your way? Sometimes the family you choose is worth more than the one you're born into. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you can rebuild the one that broke you, but only if they're willing to change. We didn't just slap a new coat of paint on the failing dealership. We gutted it structurally, financially, and spiritually. The name Gonzalez Motors came down with a wrench. In its place rose bold letters across an electric blue facade: Phoenix Electric, sustainable luxury, resurrected. And that's exactly what it was. I invested a significant portion of my earnings not because they asked, but because I saw an opportunity. A showroom of the future. Electric vehicles curated like sculptures. Reclaimed materials lining the walls. Art and innovation side by side. It was more than a car dealership. It was a living, breathing symbol of reinvention. Wendy redrafted the business structure. I was named CEO. My father was moved to chairman emeritus, a symbolic advisory title with no power. Nathan oversaw our partnership with a university innovation lab. Louisa ran our medical transport division, incorporating electric ambulances. Wendy handled legal and investor relations. They all got roles, but their influence was earned, not assumed. I made that clear. This wasn't a gift, this was a rebuild. And before we launched, I had one last condition. At our first shareholder meeting, I stood before a polished oak table, the same one where I'd once overheard conversations about how embarrassing Melanie's hobby was. I held the original disownment papers in my hand, crisp, notarized, ruthless. I don't believe in forgetting I told the room, but I do believe in transformation. And with that, I fed the documents into a glass blowing furnace, part of the new showroom's design lab. We all watched them turn to flame and ash. Mara stood beside me holding the tools. From those ashes, I crafted a glass sculpture right there on the showroom floor. A phoenix with open wings, its center core made from the residue of the very papers that tried to erase me. A soft gasp rose from the small crowd as the form took shape. My mother was crying. My father stood still, not blinking. That was the moment they finally understood. You don't fix the past by pretending it didn't happen. You honor it by turning it into something better. Some people think forgiveness is soft, that it's surrender. It's not. Forgiveness is creative. It's design. You take broken material and reshape it into something useful for you. But don't confuse that with letting people back in without change. Forgiveness can build bridges, but it must also draw lines. Forgiveness is not forgetting, forgiveness is remembering and still choosing freedom. New York was louder than I remembered, but I wasn't the same person who used to avoid crowds. At the Museum of Modern Art, my family ties sculpture stood in a glass enclosure beneath a plaque, created from recycled glass metal and ash. This piece represents the transformation of grief into growth shame, into substance and rejection into radiant power. A curator pulled me aside. Your story, it resonates, she said. We've never had so many early RSVPs for an opening. Later that evening, a woman with an elegant French accent approached me at the gala. I represent a luxury design firm based in Singapore, she said. We want a full installation, budget flexible, timeline generous. Translation: we believe in what you're doing, and we're ready to invest. Back at my hotel that night, Ezra nearly dropped his tablet. This deal could clear your investment and expand Phoenix Electric globally, he said. They want flagship showrooms with your art integrated into every space. I didn't respond right away. I stared out the window at the skyline. A year ago, I was gluing driftwood to mason jars. Now I was fielding international contracts. Funny how things change. 2 days later, Mara entered my hotel suite looking pale. Louisa showed up at the studio. I looked up from my laptop and she didn't ask for money. She didn't bring contracts. She just said, Mom's in the hospital. I sat frozen. She's okay, but it's exhaustion, stress related. My chest tightened. Ezra said nothing, just quietly shut his laptop. I stood. I'm going home. Room 304. The walls were too white. The machines too loud. My mother looked so small in that bed, so different from the woman who once judged me by my GPA and handbag. She smiled weakly when she saw me, my baby. I stood at the foot of the bed. Why didn't you call? I was ashamed, she said, tears in her voice. I wasn't just wrong, I was cruel. I didn't respond. She reached for my hand. What you built, it's beautiful, but you were always beautiful. I just didn't know how to see it. A lump formed in my throat. I forced it down. We can't undo what happened, she whispered, but can we try again? This time I nodded. Not because she was weak, but because I was strong enough to say yes. The next quarter, we hit seven figures in pre orders. The media couldn't stop talking about us. And Phoenix Electric became a case study in Harvard's Sustainable Leadership Program. But the real miracle, family dinners started to feel real. No more pretending, no more performance. Wendy helped draft a new family charter, not legal emotional. It included a clause about judgment free support, a commitment to open dialogue, and a rule no one gets mocked for their dreams. My father printed it, signed it, and framed it in the new showroom lobby. Visitors asked if it was a marketing stunt. It's a survival blueprint, I'd say, for both families and companies. There's a kind of pain that gives birth to something better. It burns away the fake. It peels back the ego. It leaves only the essential. This is what I know now. You can be discarded and still rise. You can be underestimated and still outperform. You can be disowned and still define your own name. Your worth is never in the approval of those who refuse to see you. Your worth is in the work you do when no one's watching. At the Phoenix Electric flagship store, we installed a final piece, a chandelier made from broken mirror shards, twisted copper melted glass from family heirlooms, and hidden inside flecks of the original disownment papers. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Some things don't need to be erased. They just need to be transformed." During the unveiling, my father stepped up to the mic. My daughter taught us what it means to lead with vision, not fear, to forgive but not forget, and to build not despite our wounds but with them. That night, we raised glasses under the soft, fractured light. Light that had once been trash, just like they once treated me. But now it shone like everything I'd become. I was in my Manhattan hotel suite preparing for a panel interview with the Museum of Modern Art when Ezra burst into the room, white envelope in hand. "You're going to want to sit down." Inside was a formal contract, high gloss pages, notarized signatures. The sender, my parents' legal team. Proposal: permanent merger of Phoenix Electric with the Gonzalez Family Trust. Rebranding under a new name using my public image. A $20 million payout and majority ownership to them. My stomach dropped. "They want to buy their way back in," Ezra said. I read the fine print. The language was slick, but the intent was clear. Erase my autonomy, reclaim the success I'd built, and slap their last name on the trophy. I looked up. They don't want to rebuild, they want to rewrite the story. Mara stormed in seconds later. Mel. Louisa came by the studio again. Says Nathan's moving back in with them. The bank's seizing the house. I said nothing. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Wendy. "We can fix everything. We just need your signature." There's a gap sometimes vast between people who feel bad because they lost something and those who feel bad because they hurt someone. One seeks restitution, the other seeks redemption. Regret says, "I wish I hadn't lost you." Repentance says, "I wish I had treated you better, even if I never got you back." That difference matters, especially when power is involved. I returned to my New York studio that night and stood before a new sculpture, a phoenix again, but this one was different, heavier. Its wings weren't open. They were curled inward, forged from rusted screws and scorched copper. It was still rising, but slower, more burdened. Mara stood beside me. "It looks haunted." "It's what family feels like sometimes," I said quietly. "You survive it, but you carry the smoke with you." Ezra spoke from behind. "You could just walk away. Let them collapse, let the house go, let them live in the shadow of what they threw away. He wasn't wrong, but that wasn't who I was. The next morning, a courier arrived with a handwritten note from my father. Melanie, I've written this letter 100 times in my head. There's no excuse for what we did. You were always the strongest of us, and we were too proud to see it. I'm not asking for your money. I'm asking to be your father again if you'll let me. I'm proud of you, not for the headlines, for your heart, for how you kept going when we turned our backs. I hope someday you'll let us prove we've changed, but if not, please know we love you. Love, Dad. It was the first time in my life I saw his words without an agenda, and somehow that made them land even harder. Mom was resting when I entered. Her face, pale lips cracked from fatigue. She stirred when she saw me. Mel, her voice was raw. I got Dad's letter. She squeezed my hand. Are you asking me back because you love me, I asked, or because I'm your lifeline? She didn't answer at first. Then she said both, and it was the most honest thing she'd ever said. I called Ezra and Mara to the showroom. This is what we're going to do, I said. I would save the dealership, merge it into Phoenix Electric, refinance their house under my name, keep the art business arm independent under a separate LLC. But I added only if they signed my contract. Ezra read the new terms and laughed. You made them employees. No, I said. I made them accountable. We met in the Phoenix showroom's new conference room. No living room, no ambush chairs. Everyone sat at the same long table. I brought printed contracts and placed them in front of each of them. Before we do this, I said, we talk. They shifted uncomfortably. I didn't flinch. Wendy, you drafted the original disownment. Louisa, you told people I embarrassed the family. Nathan, you said nothing. They looked ashamed, finally. We were wrong, Wendy said, all of us. Not just wrong, I said. You tried to erase me. But we're here now, Louisa said softly, trying to rebuild. And rebuilding means rules, I said. Then I laid them out. No decisions without my sign-off. No media appearances without my approval. And no rewriting history to make yourselves look better. Nathan asked, so we just follow your lead. I nodded. If you want this to work. They all signed. Here's the thing about power. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't gloat. True power is silent certainty. It's walking into a room where they once tried to silence you and setting the tone with calm authority. It's creating systems that no one can break because they're built on truth, not fear. I returned to my studio and unwrapped the phoenix sculpture, the one forged in rust and shadow. I placed it beside the original, the open-winged phoenix from the furnace. Then I began sculpting a third. This one would be made from the pieces I once thought unusable. The glass from my mother's shattered teacup, the wiring from Nathan's old laptop, a bent paperclip from Wendy's briefcase, and a circuit board from my father's first dealership cash register. It wasn't about making something pretty. It was about building something true. Phoenix Electric's grand opening looked nothing like the original dealership ever had. There were reporters, there were influencers, there were politicians. And front and center beneath a shimmering glass installation stood my family, proud, imperfect, and finally present. A journalist leaned in during the ribbon cutting and asked, how does it feel being the one who turned it all around? I thought about it for a second, then said honestly, it feels like I finally let go of trying to prove anything to them and built something just for me. Ezra clapped behind me, Mara winked, and from the stage my father took the mic. My daughter didn't just rescue our business, he said. She resurrected our values. And we follow her now because she knows what it means to rise. The last guests had gone. The showroom lights dimmed to their softest setting. Only the subtle hum of the electric chargers remained, blending with the twinkle of the custom chandelier above, crafted from tailpipe scrap and crushed wine bottles. I stood alone in the center of it all, not as a daughter desperate for approval, not as an entrepreneur proving her point, but as someone who had found her center and built a world around it. Mara entered holding a tablet. Orders are through the roof. Singapore just greenlit Phase 2. I smiled but didn't respond. Ezra came in next holding a sleek gift box. For you, from the MoMA team. Inside was a miniature version of the sculpture they'd installed, a phoenix with the hollow chest left open intentionally. Symbol of what we carry, Ezra said. and what we still need to fill. That hollow space, it said more than words ever could. A week later, I hosted something I never thought I would again, a family dinner. No contract, no secret agenda, just food warmth and no expectations. My siblings came early. My father helped set the table. My mother brought my favorite childhood dessert, a quiet offering of peace. Halfway through the meal, Nathan cleared his throat. I have something to say, he began. We used to see you as the odd one out, but that's only because you saw something the rest of us didn't. Louisa added, we were so afraid of what people thought we never stopped to ask what you thought. Wendy, the most stoic of us all, reached across the table and took my hand. We can't undo what we did, but we can choose better every day forward, and we want to. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Because this time I didn't feel like I was sitting at the kids' table of my own life. I was the one who built the table. If you've ever been called the strange one, if you've ever been dismissed, disowned, or underestimated, this story isn't just mine. It's yours too. Being the black sheep doesn't mean you don't belong. It means you lead from outside the flock. It means you're meant to build what they couldn't imagine, to rise in silence, to succeed in full color. And when they come back, you don't owe them revenge. You owe yourself a decision one made not out of pain, but out of power. 1 year after the disownment, I hosted a private event at the Phoenix Gallery to unveil a final piece. The sculpture was taller than any I'd made before. 6 feet high, forged from broken mirrors, melted keys, wire hangers, and handwritten letters dipped in resin. It shimmered like it was alive. At its base, 5 small figures hand-sculpted representing each member of my family. They were cracked, flawed, irregular, but fused together in a circle surrounding a spark, a small beating light at the center. I named it After the Ashes. The plaque read, this is what remains after shame burns away, after anger cools, and after silence ends. This is what we build, not because it was easy, but because it was time. Family redefined. People often ask me, how did you forgive them? The truth, I didn't forgive the moment they disowned me. I forgave the versions of themselves that did it, the ones who didn't know better. But I didn't let them back until they showed me they'd grown. Forgiveness isn't letting someone off the hook. It's letting yourself off the leash. It's the boldest form of freedom. Years later, people would write about Phoenix Electric as a case study. They'd write headlines like, the artist who reinvented a family empire, from disowned to dominant. How sustainable design rebuilt more than a brand. But those headlines miss the real story. The real story was never about revenge. It was about choosing resurrection over resentment, choosing boundaries over bitterness, choosing creation over correction. I didn't come back to be what they wanted me to be. I rose to become who I already was long before they could see it. You don't need permission to shine. You don't need approval to start. And you never ever need someone else's belief to begin building. But when you do rise, let it be known you built it while they weren't watching, and now you no longer need them to, because you are already home.